It's the Political Brown Kid, and just wanted to bring this up. When you look at the various races and various atrocities that have occurred on this planet throughout history, only black people are disrespected in the manner that they are. They don't, when I say they, I'm talking about the powers that be, the people in power. And when we talk about the people in power at the top of the food chain, those are mostly white people, Caucasians. So let's just be honest about that. And talking about it definitely from a perspective of America, when you hear the American rhetoric, I can't speak for what they do in Europe. I can't speak to how white people respond in Europe to the atrocities that other ethnicities have gone through. But what I can tell you is that when you listen to American people in power, presidents, senators and governors, those people are very important. Once again, I keep telling y'all, the people that run, in order to have control or power in the world, you have to control a government, you have to control the media, and you have to control the military. Now, let's look at the response to how they respond to black people's issues. When we're talking about specifically black people's issues, which is predominantly slavery, segregation, apartheid, all of those issues, white people will always counter back with several points. They'll pivot and say, well, blacks, the Africans sold slaves to the Europeans. What they're basically trying to put the onus on is Africans for the atrocities of slavery. They're trying to deflect from Caucasian dominance of the slave trade and place the blame on Africans. They'll always place the blame. They all talk about the African complicity in slavery. They'll talk about how blacks own slaves. And they talk about all of these other things that try to make it seem like it's black people's faults and black people's problems. When you see them talking about certain issues today, you can be talking about various issues. You can talk about whether it's police brutality, or you can just be talking about reparations. Any issue you bring up, a white person is just going to pivot and they'll just start talking about other deficiencies of blacks. And I'm not trying to say that those issues aren't valid, but what I'm trying to say is that they reduce or minimize their involvement and put the onus on blacks. So again, if we're talking about today and you're talking about whether it's Sonia Massey or any other atrocity that occurs, then they'll pivot, or you start talking about reparations, then they'll pivot and say, well, there were 100 blacks shot in Chicago on July 4th. What do you say about that? Then they start talking about black on black crime. That's the continuous pattern when you start talking about black issues. But when you start talking about females and you start talking about when females start talking about how they're victims, and I'm even talking about white females talk about their victims, or whatever females in general just talk about how victims they are. You don't hear white people pushing back and saying, kind of debunking those theories on female atrocities. They just kind of go with it and they concede and they don't bring up anything. They don't talk about how white females own slaves and how white females participated in slavery. They don't talk about how white people or white women participated. When I'm talking about white people, white women owned slaves, white women tortured slaves, white women were the procuring cause for a lot of black men being lynched during slavery in post-slavery times. Specifically, we're talking about Emmett Till's accuser. I can bring her up, as well as several other hundreds of other white women. They don't deflect and bring up those issues or deficiencies in women. You don't even see them bringing up when a woman starts talking about, rights and how they're not paid well or how the patriarchy is toxic. You don't see these analysts pointing out how women have wrongfully accused any man, white, black, Asian, or otherwise, falsely of, committing assault. You know what kind of assault against her, and you don't see them talking to women like that. When you look at the indigenous Americans, when you look at the atrocity that they have suffered through, And again, I'm not trying to minimize and say that they did not suffer any atrocities. And back to the women thing, I'm not trying to say that women didn't suffer, but I'm just trying to say that you don't hear pushback on the other perspective. When you start talking about indigenous Americans and how they've suffered at the hands of colonialism, you don't hear white people countering indigenous Americans and saying, well, the Indian tribes were warring with one another, and it was Indian tribes that helped Europeans wipe out other Indian tribes. You don't hear them bringing that type of stuff up. They don't talk about those aspects of the Native American atrocity. When you start talking about the Jewish atrocity, the Holocaust that happened in Germany, you don't hear white people pushing back and saying, well, you know that there were Jews that were complicit and helped the Nazi regime capture and identify other Jews. And you don't hear them talking about the complicitness of other Jews in the Holocaust. Now, once again, I'm not trying to say that any of these tragedies should be lessened or minimized, but what I'm saying is that why is it when it comes to Black atrocities, white people are so free to start pointing out the deficiencies in Black history and Black complicity, but when it comes to feminism, when it comes to Jewish Holocaust, when it comes to Indigenous American, basically genocide, they don't push back and state how those groups participated in their own demise as well, or their own atrocity. And that just goes to show you that they just don't respect Black people. Once again, too, when you start hearing about reparations, and again, I keep telling you all about that racist Bill Maher. On his show, he had him, and it was, I think, a reporter from, I guess, was it the New York Times or the New York Post? It was a journalist, maybe, and it may not have been those papers. So don't quote me on which news company this person works for. Bill Maher and this white guy was up there talking about how unpopular, I think they were talking to Charlemagne the God. They were talking about how unpopular reparations is and why they don't agree with reparations. And they had 1,000 reasons, but the main thing was it's not popular with the American public. Okay, well, immigration and immigrants aren't popular with the American people, yet you see the Democrats continually supporting a pathway to citizenship. And even you hear Republicans stating, well, the ones that are here will work towards a pathway to citizenship, but we got to seal the border. So they're willing to let those people stay here, but they're always talking about a pathway to citizenship for them, giving them free hotel rooms, giving them free EBT cards, giving them free money. Now I'm hearing they're going to let immigrants buy homes with zero money down. I don't know how true that is or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. But they spend billions of dollars on those illegal immigrants, and you don't hear the pushback, even though that's unpopular with the American people. The American people don't want that, but they do it anyway. The war in Iraq that George Bush started over some yellow cake. I keep telling y'all about that yellow cake. I don't know why they call it yellow cake, but they do. But when George Bush wanted to invade Iraq, that war was heavily unpopular. Mind you, the United Nations wouldn't sanction it. The United Nations told them, no, you can't do that. And the United States said, well, we're doing it anyway. The American public didn't want to do it, but they did it anyway. It was highly unpopular, but we did it. But as soon as it comes to stuff for Black people, reparations, now all of a sudden, now the popularity rule is upheld. And I just saw an article the other day, and I don't know where the source is, so please forgive me because I'm just making this video off the top of my head right now. It just came as a thought of a subject that I wanted to put out there while I'm here before I go out. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because of this. It was an article that basically stated that they found in a survey that white people will oppose any policies that they think Black people will benefit from. I'm not making this up. It's an article you may, whatever Google search however you're going to search on that, whatever criteria you're going to put into the search bar, put it in there. But there was an article that just came out there. It was a survey that basically said that white people oppose legislation or policies that they think black people will benefit from. And so, once again, they don't mind policies for the LGBTQ community, even if they don't support it. They don't mind policies for Hispanics or other illegal immigrants, so long as it's not a whole bunch of Africans and Haitians and Dominicans trying to run into the country. They don't have a problem with female policies. Matter of fact, I just saw an article that said Donald Trump will support in vitro fertilization. Now we're going to fund women's rights to reproduce without a man. So, and this is also still leading to, and they don't understand the devastation of giving free in vitro fertilization. Number one, if you want to have a baby, cooperate with the man. Learn to get along with the man. Do it the natural way. If you start just paying for women to freely have babies, women are already saying, I don't need a man now. And if you start giving them free pregnancies, free inseminations, they're definitely going to be screaming, I don't need a man, even though you need men to provide the sperm, his part of the reproduction process. So you still need him, but they're saying basically, I don't need him. So it's through social engineering. What I'm trying to basically say here is you're going to further destroy male-female relationships. But once again, this policy isn't being challenged. So, and I'm pretty sure this is not a popular thing. It's probably popular with women, but this program is not popular with men, I'm pretty sure, but yet they're willing to pay for this. But when it comes to anything that for black people, specifically reparations, they are adamantly against it and they won't even think about it. And what's even worse is that you have people like Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, and now you even heard, I saw a clip where Van Jones, I can't stand that dude. He was on TV talking about, I'm glad to see that the Democratic Party has abandoned, basically he was like, they've abandoned ridiculous stuff like reparations and talking about black upliftment and getting away from these victim policies, and they're becoming more patriotic and all this other stuff. And it's kind of like, really? So us asking, or our ancestors asking for what is due, is basically crying and complaining and playing victim? It's unreal. But this is all that I wanted to say on this. I was trying to make this video short, but it's gone over the 10-minute mark. But let me know what you think about this. Put your comments in the comment section. Definitely hit the like and subscribe because all of this helps the channel. Once again, this is the Political Brown Kid. I'm out of here.